At the top of the show, we talked about how you needed to hit it down the fairway in order to be successful at Torrey Pines. Although Scott Stallings really didn't do it on Sunday. He just some great iron shots afterwards. Hitting the driver in the fairway is what we're all looking for. You're going to tell us how to do it.
Well, I think, to go ahead and make sure that we understand what we're trying to do with the weapon of mass destruction, we have to keep in mind a couple things. Number one, this is the only club that you're going to be hitting the golf ball with that you should purposefully, should is the operative word here, be just barely hitting up on the ball. So in other words, when the club comes into the ball, it should just be starting its upswing.
Which is why we put it so forward in the stance.
Exactly right. And the reason we need to do that is so that when the ball and the club meet, the ball should come off with what we call optimum spin. In other words, you hear all the talk about launch monitors with Flight Scope and TrackMan. Regardless of which unit you're using or some of the others, you're generally looking for somebody who will swing the club, we'll say fairly firmly over 90 miles an hour. You're generally looking for a launch angle of anywhere from 10.5 to 16.5 degrees and spin or RPMs of anywhere from 2,000 to about 2,800. More or less those numbers are correct. Using our other clubs, like I said, we're always more or less when the ball's on the ground hitting down just a little bit. With the driver, we're hitting up. So as you just mentioned, one first thing we've got to do to make sure that we're encouraging ourselves to do that is we need to move the ball up in our stance. How far up? I like to see the ball even with your left shoulder when you set up. The reason for that is once the arm goes by the shoulder, it's obviously on its way up now. So more or less, if you have the ball up here by your left shoulder or slightly in front of it, you have a much better chance of catching that ball on the upswing. Now, the one reason that people have the most trouble hitting the ball in play is with the driver, they don't hit it solid. In other words, they're not hitting it in the middle of the club. Okay, so just so we're all clear, we're trying to make sure we're getting the ball right there in the middle of the club. Okay,
but the face is really, really big.
The face is really, really big.
And now these faces are really, really forgiving. You can hit it over here and still hit it straight.
That's right. You definitely have more forgiveness now. But one thing to keep in mind, the bottom part of this club is the part that's going to give you the most spin. So if you don't hit it in the middle, as funny as it sounds, if anything, you want to hit it up here a little bit higher on the face to get good distance. You hit it down here off the bottom of the club, and that's usually the one you see is the low cut that doesn't go very far. So we want to hit it more or less right in the middle or up just a little bit. So how do we increase our chances of doing this? This is a drill you can do at home, in your yard, on the lesson tee, wherever. To be a good driver of the ball, you need to learn to be a good, what we call, nipper of the tee. In other words, when you practice, put a tee in the ground at about the same height you'd have your ball when you like it. I generally like to see the ball, for starters, more or less, about half the ball above the top of the club. That's a good place for you to start. My former college coach, Freddie Funk, he likes to put it down really low. Other players like to tee it up really high. I think half the ball above the top of the club is a good starting position. Okay. To get the ball in the middle of the club, you need to become good at swinging and hitting the tee and just barely nipping the head of the tee, because if you hit it like that, we're going to hit it too high. If you miss the tee, you're going to hit it low on the club. So a great way to practice with your driver is to put a tee on the ground and practice swinging at the tee and just barely, with the bottom of the club, tickle the top of the tee. You do that, and I guarantee you, you're going to hit more balls in the middle of the club and get more distance. So give that a try and see how that works out for you.
All right, no more tickling allowed, though. All right, cut that out. All right,
tickle that tee.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us this week on Golf Center. We'll see you next time.